Historians restored this damaged 1856 image and discovered the secret that history tried to forget. Marcus Thompson adjusted his reading glasses as he carefully lifted the daguerreotype from its protective case. The November rain pelted against the tall windows of the Boston Historical Society's Conservation Lab, creating a rhythmic backdrop to his concentrated work. At 42, Marcus had spent nearly 2 decades as a curator, but the thrill of examining newly acquired historical photographs never faded. "This one's in rough shape," commented his assistant Kevin, peering over his shoulder. The image before them showed significant silver mirroring and tarnish, obscuring much of the detail. What they could make out was a standard mid-19th century family portrait. A well-dressed family of 4 posed stiffly in what appeared to be an ornate parlor. 1856, according to the estate documents, Marcus said, consulting his notes. "Came from the Richards family collection in Beacon Hill, been in their attic for generations." He photographed the daguerreotype from multiple angles under specialized lighting, preparing it for digital restoration. The family had donated an entire trunk of historical items after the death of their matriarch, and this photograph had been buried beneath decades of correspondence and documents. Marcus uploaded the high-resolution scans to his computer, where specialized software would begin the painstaking process of digital restoration. "I'll start the preliminary cleaning algorithm tonight," he told Kevin. "We should have initial results by morning." As Kevin left for the evening, Marcus stayed behind, watching the progress bar slowly fill. There was something about this particular image that intrigued him, a sense that beneath the damage lay something worth discovering. The lab fell quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant rain. Marcus made notes about the family's formal Victorian attire, the elaborate wallpaper pattern barely visible through the tarnish, and what appeared to be a large ornamental mirror on the wall behind them. Standard elements of period photography, yet something nagged at his historian's instinct. He saved his observations and finally headed home through Boston's wet streets, the image lingering in his mind. Marcus arrived at the lab before sunrise, unable to shake his curiosity about the daguerreotype. The restoration software had run throughout the night, and he eagerly pulled up the results on his monitor. The difference was remarkable. The family's faces now showed clear definition: a stern father with impressive sideburns, a mother in an elaborate dark dress with a cameo brooch, and 2 children, a boy and girl, posed between their parents. But it was the background that made Marcus lean forward, his coffee forgotten. The ornamental mirror behind the family, now clearly visible, reflected the opposite side of the room. And there, captured in stunning clarity, was the photographer. Marcus's breath caught. The figure operating the large format camera was unmistakably a woman, her silhouette clear, her dark dress and upswept hair conforming to 1850s fashion, her hands positioned on the camera as she captured the moment. "Kevin!" Marcus called out when his assistant arrived an hour later. "Look at this. Look at the mirror." Kevin studied the screen, his eyes widening as he realized what he was seeing. "Is that a female photographer?" Marcus confirmed, his excitement barely contained. "In 1856, do you understand how rare this is?" He zoomed in on the reflection, enhancing the resolution. The woman's face remained slightly blurred due to the angle and distance, but her presence was undeniable. Marcus grabbed his magnifying glass and examined the physical daguerreotype's edge, where photographers often signed their work. There, in faint cursive almost worn away by time, he could make out letters. C. Reynolds, 1856. His heart raced. C. Reynolds. We need to find out who this was. He immediately began searching the Historical Society's archives while Kevin combed through online databases. Female photographers in the 1850s were extraordinarily uncommon. The profession was dominated entirely by men, and women faced significant social and technical barriers to entering the field. Yet here was proof, accidentally preserved in a mirror's reflection, of a woman practicing this art in Boston over 160 years ago. By late afternoon, Marcus had found nothing in the standard photographic registries. It was as if C. Reynolds had never existed, at least not in any official capacity. Marcus spent the weekend consumed by his discovery. His small apartment in Cambridge became a makeshift research center with books on 19th century photography spread across every surface. His girlfriend, Andrea, a high school teacher, found him Sunday morning surrounded by printouts and old census records. "You barely slept," she observed, bringing him coffee. "This photographer is really getting to you." "Andrea, think about it," Marcus said, showing her the enhanced image on his laptop. This woman was practicing professional photography in 1856. That's only 17 years after photography was invented. The field was almost exclusively male, yet somehow she's been completely erased from the historical record. Andrea studied the reflection in the mirror, then looked at Marcus with understanding. "And you think it was deliberate?" "I think someone made sure she wasn't remembered," Marcus replied. He'd found scattered references to prominent male photographers in Boston during that era, names like Southworth and Hawes, whose work filled museum collections. But C. Reynolds appeared nowhere. No advertisements in newspapers, no business listings, no mention in Photographic Society records. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at the Historical Society with renewed determination. He requested access to the complete Richards family archive, every letter, ledger, and document that had come with the daguerreotype. The archivist, an elderly woman named Dorothy who'd worked there for 40 years, wheeled out 3 boxes on a cart. "Looking for something specific?" she asked, her keen eyes watching Marcus's eager expression. "A photographer named C. Reynolds. Ever heard of her?" Dorothy paused, her hand resting on one of the boxes. "Reynolds. That name does ring a bell. Give me a moment." She disappeared into the back rooms, returning 20 minutes later with a slim folder. "I remembered we had some business correspondence from the Richards family. Found this tucked in with documents from 1857. Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a bill of sale, yellowed with age but still legible. Portrait photography services rendered by Catherine Reynolds, professional photographer, 47 Beacon Street, Boston. Sum, $12. Catherine. Now he had a first name. Armed with Catherine's name and address, Marcus took his lunch break to walk through Beacon Hill. The narrow, brick-lined streets remained largely unchanged since the 19th century, and number 47 still stood, an elegant townhouse now divided into expensive condominiums. He stood on the sidewalk, imagining Catherine carrying her heavy equipment up those same steps nearly 170 years ago. Back at his desk, Marcus dove into Boston City directories from the 1850s. In the 1856 edition, he found her. Reynolds, Catherine, photographer, 47 Beacon St. His hands shook as he photographed the entry. She had existed. She had run a legitimate business. So why had her work vanished from historical memory? He expanded his search to newspapers. The Boston Public Library's digital archives yielded a small advertisement from the Daily Evening Transcript, dated April 1855. Mrs. Catherine Reynolds offers professional photographic services. Daguerreotypes and ambrotypes. Portraits of the highest quality. Ladies and children especially welcome. 47 Beacon Street. Ladies and children especially welcome. Marcus read aloud to Kevin. She was marketing to female clients. Smart business strategy when male-dominated studios might have made women uncomfortable. Over the following days, Marcus found more advertisements, each revealing fragments of Catherine's professional life. She offered reasonable rates and discretion assured. One ad mentioned photographs of working families and documentary services, unusual for an era when photography primarily served the wealthy. Then Marcus found something that made his blood run cold. In the Boston Evening Transcript from November 1858, a brief article announced, "The photographic studio of Mrs. C. Reynolds, Beacon Street, has been acquired by Mr. James Whitfield, who will continue operations under his own name. Mrs. Reynolds has retired from the profession." Marcus leaned back in his chair. Retired or forced out? He needed to find out what happened to Catherine Reynolds after 1858, and more importantly, where her photographs had gone. If Whitfield had acquired her studio, he might have acquired her work as well, and quite possibly taken credit for it. Marcus requested a meeting with Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, the Historical Society's director, and a respected authority on 19th century Boston. In her book-lined office overlooking the Boston Common, he presented his findings: the mirror reflection, the business records, the advertisements, and the suspicious retirement notice. Patricia listened intently, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. "James Whitfield," she said when Marcus finished. "His work is quite well known. We have several of his photographs in our permanent collection." She paused, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You think they might actually be Catherine's?" "I think it's possible," Marcus said carefully. "Maybe probable. When I look at our Whitfield collection, the earliest pieces are dated 1859, right after he supposedly acquired Catherine's studio. But the style is inconsistent. The early photographs show more sensitivity, particularly in portraits of women and children. The later ones are more conventional, stiffer." Patricia stood and pulled a large catalog from her shelf, a comprehensive volume on Boston photographers published in 1982. She flipped to the Whitfield entry. "Look at this." The author notes that Whitfield's early work shows surprising sophistication that doesn't match his later, more commercial style. It was attributed to him finding his voice, then losing it. But what if it was never his voice at all? Marcus completed. They spent the afternoon examining the Historical Society's Whitfield collection. 23 photographs, the earliest dated 1859, all bearing Whitfield's stamp. Marcus studied each one carefully, making notes. The early works, about 8 photographs, showed remarkable composition and lighting, especially in portraits. One image showed an Irish immigrant family in their modest home, their dignity captured despite their poverty. Another depicted a group of women factory workers, their faces showing both exhaustion and pride. "These don't match Whitfield's later commercial work at all," Patricia observed. "His subsequent photographs are all wealthy families in standard poses. These early ones have compassion, documentary instinct." Marcus photographed each piece, noting the dates and subjects. "I need to find more of Catherine's work. If Whitfield took credit for her photographs, others might have too. How many male photographers acquired struggling female photographers' studios and work?" Patricia's expression turned grim. "In that era, probably more than we'd like to think. Women couldn't easily own property or run businesses. If Catherine faced financial difficulties, social pressure, or family obligations, she might have been forced to sell, and her work absorbed into someone else's portfolio." Marcus expanded his investigation beyond the Historical Society. He contacted museums, historical societies, and private collections throughout New England, requesting information about photographs from the 1850s attributed to male photographers who had acquired studios or businesses during that period. The responses trickled in over several weeks. A curator in Worcester sent images of photographs attributed to Harrison and Sons, Estes, 1859, noting that the earliest works showed unusual sensitivity in depicting female subjects that the later photographs lacked. A private collector in Providence shared daguerreotypes signed by Thomas Blackwell, 1858, but mentioned finding old receipts that referenced a CR as the original photographer. Each discovery felt like finding pieces of a deliberately shattered mirror. Marcus created a database, cross-referencing dates, locations, and stylistic elements. A pattern emerged. Multiple male photographers in Boston and surrounding areas had acquired studios or stock from unnamed sources between 1857 and 1860, and their earliest attributed works showed quality and compositional choices inconsistent with their later material. In his apartment one evening, Marcus spread dozens of photographs across his dining table. Andrea helped him organize them chronologically. "Look at this," he said, pointing to 3 different portraits. "This one is supposedly by Whitfield, 1859. This one by Blackwell, 1858. This one by a photographer named Morrison, 1860. But look at the lighting technique. It's identical. The way the subjects are positioned near windows, the use of natural light. And all 3 show working-class subjects, which was unusual for commercial portrait photography." "You think they're all Catherine's work?" Andrea said. "I think she was incredibly prolific, and I think when she was forced out of business, her work was divided up among multiple photographers who claimed it as their own." Marcus felt both excited and furious. She documented life across class boundaries in a way that was revolutionary for the time, and it's been credited to men for over 160 years. The next morning, Marcus pitched an ambitious project to Patricia, a comprehensive survey of Boston area photographic collections from 1855 to 1865, looking for stylistic patterns that might indicate Catherine's hidden work. Patricia approved a small research grant, and Marcus hired 2 graduate students to assist. They would examine every accessible photograph from that period, looking for Catherine's distinctive eye. Word of Marcus's research spread through the tight-knit community of historical photography experts. The response was mixed. Some colleagues expressed fascination and offered support. Others reacted with skepticism or outright hostility. Marcus received an email from Dr. Gerald Hutchinson, a prominent photography historian and author of several books on 19th-century daguerreotypists. "Your theory is speculative at best, irresponsible at worst," Hutchinson wrote. "You're suggesting we reattribute hundreds of authenticated photographs based on stylistic analysis and circumstantial evidence. This could undermine decades of scholarship. I strongly advise you to reconsider this project." Marcus read the email twice, his jaw tightening. He understood Hutchinson's concern. The man had literally written the book on James Whitfield and built his reputation on that scholarship. Admitting that Whitfield had stolen Catherine's work would require Hutchinson to revise everything he'd published. At a regional museum conference in Hartford, Marcus presented his preliminary findings. The room was divided. Younger scholars and those interested in women's history leaned forward with interest. Older, established figures in the field crossed their arms and frowned. During the Q&A session, tensions erupted. "You're seeing patterns that aren't there," challenged a museum director from New Hampshire. "Lots of photographers improved over time or changed their styles. That doesn't mean they stole someone else's work." "But look at the documented evidence," Marcus countered, showing the business records, advertisements, and the mirror reflection on the screen. Catherine Reynolds was a working professional photographer. Her studio was acquired by Whitfield. The timeline matches perfectly with the appearance of his earliest attributed works. "One photograph showing a woman in a mirror doesn't prove she took all these other pictures," another scholar argued. "You're making enormous claims based on limited evidence." The debate continued for 40 minutes, growing heated. Marcus defended his methodology while acknowledging the need for more research, but he left the conference frustrated. The resistance wasn't just about academic rigor. It was about protecting established narratives and reputations. Admitting that multiple prominent male photographers had built their careers on stolen work from a woman would shake the foundations of photographic history. That evening, Patricia called him. "I heard about the conference. How are you holding up?" "I knew there'd be pushback," Marcus said, "but I didn't expect it to be so personal. It's like they're more concerned about protecting dead men's reputations than uncovering the truth." "Welcome to revisionist history," Patricia replied with sympathy. "Every time we discover that historical narratives are incomplete or wrong, there's resistance from those invested in the old story. But you're doing important work, Marcus. Don't let them discourage you." 3 months into his research, Marcus received an unexpected email through the Historical Society's website. The sender was Eleanor Hughes, a retired librarian living in Portland, Maine. She'd read about Marcus's project in a New England historical preservation newsletter. "I believe Catherine Reynolds may have been my great-great-great-grandmother," Eleanor wrote. "My family has some old letters and documents that mention her. I'd be happy to share them if you're interested." Marcus called her immediately. Eleanor, who sounded to be in her 70s, explained that her family history had always included vague stories about Aunt Catherine, who took photographs in Boston, but details were scarce. Family legend said she was quite successful until she married, then had to give it up. "My grandmother used to say Catherine was heartbroken about losing her studio." 2 days later, Marcus drove to Portland. Eleanor welcomed him into her Victorian home, which was filled with antiques and family heirlooms. She'd prepared tea and laid out several boxes of documents on her dining table. "I went through everything in my attic after getting your information," she said. "I found more than I expected." The collection was extraordinary. Letters from Catherine to her sister Mary, dated between 1854 and 1862, detailed her struggles and triumphs as a female photographer. "The equipment is so heavy," one letter read. but I've grown strong carrying it to clients' homes. Today I photographed 3 families, 1 wealthy, 2 not. The poor families could barely afford my fee, but their faces when they saw their portraits made my heart full. These may be the only photographs they ever have of their children. Another letter, dated 1857, revealed darker developments. Mr. Whitfield has approached me again about purchasing the studio. He says a woman shouldn't be in business alone, that it's improper. But Father's death left me with debts, and the studio is all I have. I will not sell my life's work to that vulture. But in 1858, Catherine's tone changed. I have no choice. The bank will not extend my loan without a male guarantor, and Mother's illness requires constant care. Whitfield has made a final offer. I must accept it, though the sum is far less than my business is worth. He promises to preserve my work, but I don't trust him. Mary, I feel I'm erasing myself from history. Marcus read with tears in his eyes. Catherine's voice, silent for over 160 years, spoke directly to him through these pages. Eleanor watched him with understanding. She never stopped feeling the loss, she said quietly. My grandmother said Catherine barely spoke about photography after selling the studio. She married in 1860, had 4 children, and died in 1891. But she kept one photograph, supposedly a self-portrait, hidden in her Bible. No one knows what became of it. Marcus returned to Boston with copies of Catherine's letters and Eleanor's permission to use them in his research. The letters transformed his project from academic speculation to documented historical recovery. Catherine's own words described her work, her clients, her artistic vision, and the circumstances that forced her from the profession. He organized a comprehensive exhibition at the Historical Society. Catherine Reynolds, the photographer in the mirror. The centerpiece was the restored daguerreotype showing her reflection, surrounded by photographs Marcus had identified as likely her work, alongside her letters, business records, and contemporary documentation. Patricia helped Marcus prepare a scholarly paper for the Journal of American Photographic History, laying out the evidence methodically. Catherine's documented business from 1855-1858, the suspicious timing of Whitfield's acquisition, the stylistic analysis of early Whitfield photographs, the pattern of other photographers acquiring anonymous work during the same period, and Catherine's own testimony in her letters. The exhibition opening drew significant attendance: journalists, historians, photography enthusiasts, and members of Eleanor's extended family. Marcus had spent weeks arranging the photographs chronologically, showing the evolution of Catherine's distinctive style, her use of natural light, her compassionate approach to subjects across class boundaries, her attention to the dignity of working people. One wall displayed a direct comparison. Early Whitfield photographs beside later confirmed Whitfield works, the difference in quality and sensitivity starkly apparent when viewed side by side. Another section showed the mirror daguerreotype under multiple magnifications, revealing details of Catherine's face, her concentration as she worked, her hands steadying the camera. Dr. Hutchinson attended, and Marcus braced for confrontation, but the older historian studied the exhibition in silence for nearly an hour before approaching Marcus. "The letters," he said finally. "Her own testimony is difficult to dismiss. I still have questions about attributing specific photographs, but I can't deny that Whitfield acquired her studio and that his early work shows significant stylistic differences from his later material. I'm not trying to destroy anyone's scholarship," Marcus said carefully. "I just want Catherine to be remembered." Hutchinson nodded slowly. "You've done thorough work. I'll need time to review my own research in light of this evidence, but you may be right. And if you are, the field owes you a debt, and owes Catherine Reynolds far more than that." 6 months after the exhibition opened, the Journal of American Photographic History published Marcus's paper. The response from the academic community was overwhelmingly positive, with several prominent historians calling for comprehensive reviews of their collections. Museums began investigating photographs previously attributed to male photographers who had acquired studios from unknown sources in the late 1850s. The Historical Society officially reattributed 8 photographs in their collection from James Whitfield to Catherine Reynolds. Other institutions followed. The Worcester Historical Museum reattributed 6 photographs. the Providence Athenaeum 3 more, and private collectors began questioning the provenance of works in their possession. Marcus collaborated with digital imaging experts to create a stylistic analysis algorithm comparing known elements of Catherine's work with thousands of period photographs. The program identified 47 additional images across New England that showed strong probability of being her work. Each case required individual verification, but slowly, Catherine's body of work was being reconstructed. Eleanor Hughes donated Catherine's letters to the Historical Society, and Marcus worked with her family to trace Catherine's descendants. They found over 200 living relatives, many stunned to learn their ancestor had been an accomplished photographer. One descendant working in digital photography in Seattle traveled to Boston to see the exhibition. "I always wondered where my interest in photography came from," she told Marcus. "Now I know it runs in the family." On a cold March afternoon, Marcus stood in the conservation lab where he'd first examined the damaged daguerreotype. The image that had started everything, the Richards family portrait with Catherine's reflection in the mirror, now hung in the Historical Society's main gallery, a spotlight illuminating her ghostly presence behind her subjects. His phone buzzed with an email from a museum in Philadelphia. They'd found a daguerreotype showing a photographer's studio interior, signed C. Reynolds, 1857. Could Marcus verify its authenticity? He smiled, already drafting his response. Catherine's work was still emerging from historical obscurity, each discovery a small victory against erasure. Kevin joined him, holding a newly acquired photograph, a portrait of a young Irish immigrant woman, her expression both wary and hopeful. Found this in an estate sale attributed to unknown photographer circa 1856. But look at the lighting. Look at the way she's positioned. Marcus examined it carefully, seeing Catherine's distinctive compassion in how the subject had been photographed, not as a specimen of poverty, but as a human being with inherent dignity. "It's hers," he said with certainty. "I'm sure of it." Outside, evening settled over Boston, the same streets Catherine had walked, carrying her heavy camera and glass plates, determined to capture the truth of her era despite all the obstacles in her path. For 165 years, she'd been forgotten, deliberately erased from the profession she'd helped pioneer. But now, thanks to her own accidental self-portrait reflected in a mirror, Catherine Reynolds was finally being remembered, not as someone's wife or mother, but as what she'd always been: an artist, a documenter of truth, a photographer whose work had shaped the visual history of her time. Marcus returned to his desk, pulling up the database of Catherine's growing body of attributed work. There was still so much to discover, so many photographs waiting to be recognized, so many stories waiting to be told. But tonight, looking at Catherine's reflection in that mirror, her face slightly blurred but her determination clear, Marcus felt the profound satisfaction of having restored not just an image, but a life deliberately forgotten. History had tried to erase Catherine Reynolds, but her own reflection had saved her, and now her story would endure.